Hello everyone, this is Trey at EarthLab33 in InfoArc. Today we are going to talk about thermal mass and passive solar heating in an airship and really any building that's set up for passive solar. This one is a particularly efficient building for passive solar heating. I've lived here for about 2 years, actually 1 year and 11 months to be exact. As you can see, I'm wearing my tank top in the house. It's November 23rd. It's probably close to 76 degrees or so in the house. It is 12:42 in the afternoon. We have absolutely no heater and no cooling system in the house. It's all built into the structure. And we do actually have a wood stove, which I will talk about later. But it's been a pretty warm fall, so I would say that the passive solar is actually a little more than we need most of the time. But I'll go through everything. I just wanted to talk mostly about how the structure gains heat from the sun and distributes it into the house when the sun isn't up, and how that's working for us, and just a little bit about living in this type of a structure. I am wearing my tank top as I mentioned earlier. This one's the Samurai. It's the Samurai bighorn sheep. It's a species of sheep that's around quite a bit in this environment, and it's not a paid endorsement, but this is made by Aerosol in Taos. Really fantastic clothing printers and manufacturers, and these guys are awesome. Right now we're getting close to the I forget what the azimuth and the winter. Basically the winter sun is at its lowest point in about a month, so we're getting close to that. We are in a 1994 vintage Earthship, so I'll show you the outside window arrangement. As you can see, angled windows. They're basically set so that the winter sun is exactly perpendicular to the glass, and therefore sun entering the building penetrates as deep as it can into the house, and then heats up the thermal mass. What is thermal mass? Well, in our case, it's these big walls that are made of mostly earth, and this is about 20 some odd year old Earthship. So they used to make these with what's called an earth cliff. So we've actually been dug down into the ground, and this is the actual level of the ground as it usually would be before digging it out with an excavator. So I'm about 6 feet tall, so we're 5'8" underground where I'm standing. So above this level is another layer of thermal mass, which is tires packed with rammed earth. And as anybody who's learned about Earthships at all, that is the hallmark of the Earthship, is the tire wall construction. And they call them in the community radially reinforced rammed earth bricks. That's what Mike Reynolds likes to call them. I would counter that they're actually circumferentially reinforced with the steel belted radial tires. So however you want to call it, it's a tire filled with dirt that's packed very, very tightly with earth using a sledgehammer or some other device to just really pack it in there. And those end up being like about 600-pound bricks that are all stacked up and form the upper part of this wall. Nowadays, they don't dig out the airships or excavate them like they do now, like they did with this one. They simply start on the flat ground, maybe at the grade the lot, and then just start piling tires. It's quite a process I was involved in one of the recent airship builds here in the community, and it's very arduous work, but it definitely makes a fortress-like construction that is a monolith of thermal mass. And thermal mass was discovered to really to increase the efficiency of these buildings, and to make them possible, really, because the mass of the earthen walls, the tire walls, along with this earthen berm that basically goes up all the way up to the roof on the north side of the building, creates an earthen heat storage. And that, along with the temperature of the earth dug down below frost line, is a constant 59 degrees. So therefore, it doesn't really take much sunlight to warm up the building, because simply the baseline temperature of the earth is 59 degrees. So really, we just have to heat it up to a comfortable 70-72 degrees, which can be done really in an hour in the morning. And I'll show you the charts later where we actually have recorded the temperature curves as we see the sun warming the building, and then the nighttime temperature is tapering off very slowly because the earthen walls are heated by the sun and then re-radiate that heat back into the space. So as you can see, we have the kitchen, and very small kitchen in our case. What's the other side, the wall here, being hit by the sunlight there. The floor is also a dense material. This is concrete painted green. This is dark green, so it absorbs quite a bit of sunlight. And then the other parts of the front room here are also dense materials. In this case, this is the the wall that surrounds what's called the botanical cell. And as you can see, we have quite a few plants here that are also absorbing sunlight. They're also shading the space so it doesn't get too hot. And all of this just creates a dense heat storage medium that in our case in the wintertime is great to have, because we don't really have to worry too much about heating the building in the evening when it gets down to sub-zero, often below zero, from next month until maybe the end of February. The outside temperature never goes above freezing, and in the house it's a comfortable 72, 75. In the daytime gets quite warm, and I'll talk about venting shortly. You really don't need a heater if you just use the solar radiation that's available. That presents some problems, which is one of the things that happened right when we moved here, was that there were not really any good shades on these windows. We have 9 basically 12-foot tall by 4-foot wide windows, so it's just a wall of glass. If you have the sun coming in without any shade, especially in the summer months, it's unbearable. And so we quickly had to figure out how to build shades in order to keep it comfortable in the building. So that's what we did. We have constructed these shades that were kind of a reflective color, and they are made of this material called Sunbrella. Sunbrella is the company, and they're basically just a Roman shade design. And we had to think quick and figure out how to make these because there just wasn't any proper shading in the structure. So we just did a quick, Roman shade style design, and it just has a single point of pulling up. Now, the reason why I didn't buy shades was because, firstly, they're very expensive, and secondly, they're made out of paper, which we saw in the shades that were here already, that they deteriorate quickly with the sunlight hitting them all the time. They just really turned into dust pretty much. So these we have, we made quite a simple design, and we also intend to motorize these eventually, and I'll talk a bit later about automation. But we just basically can pull that up with one hand and then cleat it, and we can quickly adjust the shading and therefore the temperature inside the building. Often adjustments need to be made in a hurry because out here in New Mexico, the sun is just like relentless when there's no cloud cover. And also in the wintertime, you want to be able to heat up the building quickly and also drop these shades at night quickly because you want to retain all the heat that you've accumulated from the solar input. So that's what we came around to, and it took a few tries to figure out how to not let these fall out of the window bays. We already had these mullions here on the inside, and so those serve as little tracks. When they slide down, especially with a center pull like this, they kept falling out of the bays like this, and it was very frustrating. Just a little side note, I put this is like a 1¼ inch dowel that is in a pocket at the bottom, and I just put a little tiny slice of a Teflon disc screwed to the ends of that, and that mullion has some silver tape in order to it's like duct tape, but really slippery. So creating all those viscous surfaces made the bottom of the shade slide really nicely in the track. So that's just a little side note. Kind of proud of that, actually. So yeah, then the other thing about these big plants growing in here is that they provide a lot of natural shade, and so we can leave for example, today we have the center 4 or 5 windows open all the way, but we have these big trees, a rubber plant and a ficus, that are just providing a lot of shade and oxygen, and just really a pleasant environment to hang out in here during a fairly warm day. Even though it's November the 23rd, it's probably about 50 degrees outside right now in the house. It would be a lot warmer without these shade trees, but they provide enough that we can keep the windows open, see outside, and really have a nice environment to hang out in. And since I work at home, it's pretty crucial for it to be comfortable, especially during days like this. We do have a wood stove, you can see also a pile of cardboard, which I should have cleaned up before doing this, but a small little Yodel stove. This thing is tiny and very efficient. What happens on a night or a day where you don't have any where you don't have sufficient solar gain to warm the house up? Well, in this environment, 7,000 feet in the winter, it's freezing cold, and we do have a very tightly constructed house. There's not a whole lot of leakage through the windows, but on a day where it's like 0 degrees outside, cloud cover, it does get quite cold in here. That little stove will heat up this house in about 20 minutes, and it'll be a comfortable 70 again. So that's like a backup. We've had 2 fires so far, probably about 2 months of fairly cool temperatures at night. So the thermal mass really is sufficient to keep us quite comfortable. In the summertime, that might not always be the case. Sometimes it gets really hot in here, so we drop all the shades. And in our case, we have 2 rooms, which are little caves. They're quite far below ground. Standing on the floor down there, it's roughly 8 feet below the surface of the desert. And that will provide quite a bit of cool because, again, the thermal mass keeps its temperature at 59 to 65 degrees or so. So below ground, it's actually quite comfortable. Nowadays, they build their ships with cooling tubes that go through the earth, through the berm in the back of in the north side of the house, and that will cool off. That will basically pull air through the berm, cool it off, and if you put the upper vents open, that'll pull air through the berm and make it quite comfortable in the house without any air conditioning whatsoever. It's just simply that the sun, the thermal mass heating up the air in the house, pulling it through the upper vents, will create airflow. Pulling it through the berm, cools it off. Voila, natural air conditioning. This is the upper story. So we have these clear story windows up above the vigas. So these are the logs that basically form the roof framing. But we have these clear story windows that are way up above, and most airships have these type of upper ventilations. I have to use this big candy cane to open the window, and I'll just go ahead and crank it open. This is less than an efficient way to do it, but we do have some automation in the works for these, so they'll operate on temperature reading automated windows. That is current project I'm working on, but for now we open these vents, and it allows the warm air which has accumulated in the lower floor to rise up through this vent, and it basically pulls cooler air from below up. So basically you're constantly making little adjustments, but you have a comfortable house with no heating bill. We buy about, I don't know, $60 to $100 worth of firewood every year. We bought like half a cord last year and went through half of it during the winter. So I think the proof's in the pudding there. We really have developed a very feasible, very consistent way of staying comfortable without any energy expenditures, besides wood and our own efforts to open and close windows, open and close shades. It's kind of shocking actually how well it works. And bear in mind that this is an early airship. The new ones stay a pretty constant 72 degrees year-round without any firewood, without any additional input besides the sun. So pretty psyched about that, actually. Here we are back in the control room. I just wanted to show you what the stats were for this particular house. We've been recording them pretty faithfully for about 3 years in this house. Now we have one sensor that's recording temperatures in this house. We're going to have about 3 or 4, I think, eventually. And basically you can see here this is from last year because we don't have the current ones on the server yet. But what we're looking at here is the light blue line being the solar path. As you can see, sun's coming up about 6 6:50 in the morning. And so that's just recording the path of the sun. And then this is the humidity. So we're really kind of we're tied to the temperature, and you can see they kind of mirror each other. They're sort of like reverse of each other. This is the interior temperature of the house. So at it's at its lowest point, probably first thing in the morning. We're down at about 68. Yeah, right there, 68 at about 9 a.m. We open the shades right after we have our coffee, so it's like, what is it, about 9:20 or so. That's actually kind of late. We're usually up before that, but here we go. We're up, before 10 a.m. We're up to 72 in the house, and it climbs a little slowly until we're right here at about 1:30, so roughly 70, 75, 74, 75 degrees. It tapers off very slowly in the evening, so by 11 p.m. it's still pretty comfy in the house, about 71 and a half degrees. By that point we're asleep, and it's you start all over again. That's a pretty common temperature curve for this place, and we can often game it a little bit by starting a fire, but we're generally pretty comfy. And I would say, for an older Earthship, this is doing quite well. In the newer ones, this line would be a lot flatter just because it just really doesn't cool off that much in the house. But even so, and this was last year when the windows were kind of had some air leaks, which I've since remediated. So I mean, we're rarely ever in a situation where it's freezing cold in the house, and if it is, we'll just light a fire for an hour or so, and we're just fine. One more thing, since I did show you a typical sunny day, I thought I'd also show you the chart for a cloudy day. And I happen to know that last year on 26th of October, we had a big snowstorm. In fact, a really huge snowstorm. It buried the house in about 1.5 feet of snow. So that was, first of all, startling. And second of all, it was quite cold. So the chart for that day looks like this. And you can see we got down to 60, a little under 66 degrees, and it really didn't get much warmer in the house. It kind of bumped here and there. We may have had a fire. I'm not remembering too well, but or we just had some sun peek through the clouds during that day. But you can see here the humidity is pretty high, and then I think by around, looks like 6 o'clock, we decided, oh, it's gonna stay cold, so let's just light a fire, and boom, we're up to almost 71 degrees in the late evening. So that's just how that goes. Luckily, there's plenty of sun in New Mexico, so we don't experience like really long stretches of cloudiness. But to be fair, it is a successful passive solar heating situation because there is a lot of sun here. So I'd be interested to know how to improve passive solar heating, and other means of heating a thermal mass style building in light of this fact. And I welcome any comments on that.